We're going to talk about some things called summary statistics. They summarize the data, and we're going to look at two things in particular: the five number summary, sometimes called the five-figure summary, and IQR, which stands for interquartile range. And we'll go through them first, then we'll look at some examples. There are other numbers that do summarize the data, especially for measures of spread. There's also one called standard deviation, which we'll deal with in another video. So that's coming up. Standard deviation is another measure of spread. That'll come up later on. So first of all, the five-figure summary, or the five-number summary, has 5 numbers in it: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So basically, you'll see 5 numbers written with commas between them, and the first number will be the minimum value. So in the list of data in the data set, the smallest number comes first. Then the lower quartile. The lower quartile might not be something you've heard of before, so I'll come back to that. So we've got the minimum value. The next one's the median. You've heard of that. That's the middle value. Now, another way of considering that is that it's got 50% of the data above it and below it. So it's worth taking that down. Now, the lower quartile is at the 25% point. So it's the middle of the lower half of the data. So if we take everything below the median, the middle of that is called the lower quartile. The upper quartile, or sometimes called Q3, note that that's called Q1 and Q2. Q3, the upper quartile, is at 3/4 of the way, or 75% above the ordered data. Remember, when we're talking median, we have to put the data in order. So this is ordered data. The maximum value is basically the largest value in the number set, and that goes last. So you have 5 numbers all together as a list. So that brings us on to the next thing we're going to look at: the measures of spread. Now, measures of spread are not averages. Averages tell you what's happening at the center. So the averages, we call them measures of central tendency. Okay, measures of central tendency, and basically they're describing the middle, what's happening at the center of the data. It's a summary of that, or a description of that. And that's your mean, median, and mode. And you've no doubt heard of them. Measures of spread are different. They tell you how the data is spread or dispersed. So they're measures of dispersion, how the data is spread out. And there's various ways of doing that. As I said, standard deviation we talked about in a future video. The main two we're looking at in this video are the range, which you've heard about. That's the extremes. So how far apart are the extremes? So that's maximum value minus minimum value, which corresponds with that minus that. Then there's another type of range called the interquartile range, known as IQR. And it's also how far the data spread out, but it's how far the middle 50% of the data. Okay, the middle 50%, how far is the middle 50% spread out? Now, we do that by going Q3 minus Q1. So back up here, Q3 minus Q1. So see how it's the middle 50% because we're at the 75% mark minus the value at the 25, and you've got the middle range of 50%. So it's like this range, but it's the range in the middle 50%. So that will give us the interquartile range, Q3 minus Q1. Okay, there's a couple of different types. If we have an even number of data and an odd number of data, we've got to do things differently. Firstly, if we have an odd number of data, so we've got 9 bits of data here, and it's in order. So what we do first thing we should do is find the median. Now, in an odd number of data, the median will lie on a number. It will be on top of 5. 5 will be the median, because you can see we've got just as much data above it and below it there. 4 bits of data. So we then take that median. Notice how it does not belong to this upper set, nor does it belong to this lower set. It's in the middle of things. It's a bit like the pivot on a seesaw. Okay? It's neither at the left side nor the right side. It's right in the middle. So that's where the median is. This here, as I said, is the lower set. Now find the middle of that. There's 4 data values in there, so the middle will be between the second and the third, and it's halfway between 2 and 2, which is 2. So Q1 is 2. We said Q2 is 5, the median is 5, and now we need to find for the upper set the middle of that. That'll give us Q3, the upper quartile, and that is halfway between 6 and 7, which is 6.5. So to get the IQR, we go upper quartile minus lower quartile. So that's 6.5 minus 2, which is 4.5. If there's an even number of data, the main difference is in finding the median. It'll be halfway between 2. So we've got 10 bits of data there, 10 data points in the data set. So the median will be halfway between the middle 2 numbers, which is 7.5. So the median Q2 is 7.5. We go everything below that line. So that's from 2 up to that 7. We find the middle of that, which is the 3. So the lower quartile Q1 is 3, and the upper quartile above the median, the middle of that is Q3, upper quartile is 9. So IQR is Q3 take Q1, which is 9 take 3, which is 6. Okay, a simple example here. We have to determine the range in the IQR and then the 5-figure summary or the 5-number summary. Okay, luckily it's in order, so it's in ascending order. If it wasn't in ascending order, we would have to do that. Now we need to locate the median. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bits of data, so n is 10. So we can find it by going n plus 1 over 2 will give us the position of where the middle is, and that's 11 over 2, so that's in the 5.5th position. And that means halfway between the 5th and the 6th, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it's there, and the middle is 7. So Q2, the median, is 7. Now we look at the lower set. Okay, it's everything below the arrow. The upper set, when we get to it, will be everything above. And we need to look at the middle of the lower set to get Q1, the lower quartile, and we can see that it's 4. So Q1 equals 4. So lastly now we've got to get Q3. Q3 is 13. It's the middle of the upper set, 13. So now we go the IQR. So IQR is Q3 minus Q1, the upper quartile minus the lower quartile, and basically that's 13 take 7. Oops, no, 13 take 4. Looked at the wrong digit. 13 take 4, which is 9. And that's the IQR. The range is the biggest value minus the smallest value. So the range is max value minus the min value. And that would be 20 take 2, which is 18. And the 5-number summary. Okay, so remember with the 5-number summary, we have the lowest value first, which is 2. So 5-figure summary, 5-number summary. Okay, so we've got the 5 numbers. So the first one was the lowest value, which is 2. Then we go for the lower quartile, which is 4. And then we go for the median, which is 7. And then we go for Q3, which is 13. And then we go for the maximum value, which is 20. And we've got our 5-figure summary. We're going to draw a picture of that coming up in the near future called a box plot or a box and whisker plot. And it will graph that, and you'll be able to physically see which parts of the data are stretched and compressed, and how spread the data is. The 5-number summary gives you a sense of that, but it's better if it accompanies also a box plot